So, welcome at a new recording of the Workplace Ninja Netherlands podcast, where we are diving deep into what's new on Intune, some Entra, some events, and let's see where we end with all the topics. We prepared some stuff. The first was two bullets, but then Eric cannot join the club, and then we had a whole bunch of topics for this month. So a lot has happened. But we are recording this on Friday. Last Tuesday, we had a big event in the Netherlands. Kenneth and Eric, you both have realized all the sessions. You do not, you have presented, but not all the sessions. Only one, I guess. But you managed all the speakers and all the sessions. How was ExpertsLive last Tuesday? Kenneth,
Yeah,
start with you.
it was. I think it was a huge success. Looking at Experts Live, I think the four of us have all been involved in some sort of way. And what we have seen this year is that the event has grown even bigger. So we had more than 2,000 persons actually attending the event. Frans, you have been quite busy making radio and helping out there. Sander had his session with, from what I heard, a lot of attendees as well. Besides actually being involved as speaker manager together with Eric, we also had the pleasure to deliver a session which was really interactive. I'm looking back at a really successful event, and already looking forward to next year.
And talking about numbers, can you share some numbers? Probably how many sessions, how many speakers, how many
Yeah,
attendees?
so we had 106 sessions given by more than 100 speakers. To be honest, it was challenging to manage that, and I actually was quite glad that I'm able to do this together with Eric. We also had some help from Isidora and Wilma, and with the four of us, we actually were able to manage this amount of speakers because
Yeah,
in the end, every small question from every speaker together is a huge amount of work.
and from an attendee perspective, I think we had above 2,000 attendees in at NBC in Nieuwegein. So one of the biggest. I think it's the biggest Microsoft community event in the Netherlands
Yeah,
from the last few years. And
yeah.
I think, yeah, that's awesome that we have realized that. And looking back, only a big smile on all the faces. So that's,
Yeah.
I think, that was more than good.
Yeah, and yeah, a personal note is what's really nice at this event is that we also meet people we haven't seen for a couple of years, maybe. So it's besides actually an interesting session, you can also call it like a mini reunion with people you have worked before. So it's really
Yeah,
nice to mingle and socialize with people as well. I think I can say that if you want, you can socialize the whole day without attending one session at all. So for that, the event is also gold in my opinion.
absolutely. And Eric, any additions on that?
Yes. Express Live 1 day, but for us it was 9 months of work. We had about 550 sessions to evaluate. And we had only place for maybe 90 sessions because we also has sponsor sessions in the slots. So it was really 9 months of work every week. 4 hours, I think, spent on communication, meetings, whatever. So I'm glad that's over. I look back at a very nice event. Of course, there's room for improvement. For example, the workshops, but we'll do that next year, 2nd of June, 2026.
And what Martin says, and no winter sleep, but have some summer rest, and then in September we will kick it off again within the core team organizing Experts Live for next year.
Indeed. So,
And
Sander, how was your session?
Way too short. No. My session was really great. I've talked about conditional access, and not from a security perspective, more from a monitoring perspective. So, how do you make sure your conditional access is in place and stays in place? It's no new sort of firewall, so you want to know who is touching it, what is changed, and and how to remediate issues. So I discussed how to find black holes of holes in your as a backdoor, for example, all users excluded, for example, or someone has changed the policy from reporting only to deny, for example, all that kind of stuff. So I've shown the different ways how to get the information, and how to involve AI, of course, and I think all the attendees are very we're very happy at the end, and I also
Yeah.
had some good feedback.
So, knowing you a little bit, I have the feeling you can also talk for a whole day about this subject. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I did realize, and I also mentioned that multiple times in my session. I realized at that particular moment that I can create 5 more sessions about a subject.
Yeah.
It's just even more in depth than it already was.
Yeah.
So all the attendees were also shouting, "Then please give us also the other 5 sessions, and we can
Yeah.
talk all day about this." So yeah,
Well,
maybe for the next
let's
time.
plan that for one of our next upcoming Workplace Ninjas in-person events. Yeah,
Yep, yeah, for sure.
cool. Hey, Frans, and your role within the event?
yeah, it starts also way back months ago. Setting up Express Live Radio. Luckily, we had the support from Stefan van der Wielen, Ralf Eckhart, and all the others, because we need a streaming server to have the audio stream on. Connect that to, for example, TuneIn, and in the last week with DABH Plus here in the Netherlands. So we were for a week countrywide on the stream on DABH Plus. um, yeah, that's really awesome. That you need to create a playlist, do all the speaks within the streams. So that's also that's all prepared by all the DJs that have performed in not only on the Express Live Day, but also on the days before and the months before.
Yeah,
But a special shout out to Ralf Eckhart and Mathieu Alström and Bert Wolters that has on the day before, the 2nd of June, we have built up the whole studio in Nieuwegein, and then at I think it was around 11, the stream was live from NBC. So Bet kicked it off from 11 to 1 in the night. Ralph take the parts from 1 to 3, and then Mathieu did the last thing between 3 and 6, and then
oh,
from 6 in the morning we take the agenda for the whole day, so to say. So yeah, that was a
talk
really
about
awesome.
dedication, huh? Wow, yeah,
Yeah,
impressive. Yeah,
if you are working together with some radio freaks, then this is the result, so to say.
yeah, and I actually listened on the radio using DAB Plus. And actually, my wife was sitting next in the car with me and said, "Well, it listens to like a normal radio station." And I said, "Well, that's exactly the idea of that." So,
Yeah,
yeah, okay, cool.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And but we are Workplace Ninjas. We are hosting this podcast, but we have supported Experts Live on that. My name is Frans Oudendorp, and this time I'm joined by Sander Rosemuller, Erik Loef, and Kenneth van Suksum, and you heard all of them already. When looking to the future, we have an upcoming event I think it's this month for the local workplace Ninja Netherlands, and that's hosted by Proxys. Think that's in
that's
Hollywood.
correct. Yeah.
So we have, I think we have a few sessions.
Yeah. So everything is already planned. The event is live, so you can, if you want to join, you can find us on Meetup. Probably within the show notes, it will also be mentioned. But this time we are back at the Hollywood Cinema, which is a full-service cinema. We have 3 sessions. One by Maarten de Groet, the founder of ExpertsLive. We have a session by Janneke Spiekerman, also very interesting. And we last but not least, we have a session from Pim Jacobs, also quite an interesting session. Many people already have RSVP'd to the meetup, but we still have some room available. So if you listen to this, feel free to join us. Because we will be ending the whole meetup with viewing a nice movie together. And Erik, can we also already tell something about the movie we are going to see?
Yes, it will be Mission Impossible. I don't know the number, but the latest, the latest Mission Impossible. And of course, during the viewing the movie, you can order some drinks or some bitterballen.
Cool.
So, that's also good.
Yeah, so really looking forward to that one. To be a little bit more concrete, so the meetup itself is on Wednesday, the 18th of June, and it starts at 3:30 in the afternoon. So again, please RSVP on our meetup page, and we hope to see you there.
Yeah, first session will be started at 4, so you have a half hour to walk in and get some drinks and prepare for the first session. All the information is on meetup.com/WPNinjasNL. I will feature that in the show notes as well, but also the link is featured on our website, WPNinjas.nl. Moving forward, we are also contributing to the Workplace Ninja Summit. That is in September in Baden, in Switzerland. Exactly 22 September to 25 in the Trafro Baden. A call for sessions is closed, so Peter Dalmans, one of the Workplace Ninja Netherlands hosts, has a lot of work to do with all the sessions, selecting the correct ones. What you guys did for ExpertsLive, Peter needs to do that for the summit. If you want to attend us, go to WPNinjas.eu or summit.WPNinjas.global, our new website. And then you have the opportunity to register for your attendance in September. So if you want to be part of one of the biggest workplace events in Europe, you need to visit us in Baden, I think. And probably Kenneth, Sander, Erik, you guys will probably join Sander. Definitely, because Sander was a pre-selected speaker. And Erik, Kenneth, you guys probably have already submitted sessions for that one, isn't it?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Yes.
And from that perspective, last year we actually held a small get together with the local user groups, something that we are planning for this year as well. And I think that was one of the nicest things, to meet up with people from the Netherlands in Switzerland in a nice bar with a rooftop and stuff like that. So really looking forward to September to the next big event which takes place.
Nice. Talking about Intune, what's new? We're already 50 minutes on our way, but let's move into some technical stuff. The vulnerability remediation agent for Intune is in public preview. If you have Security Copilot, because this is relying on Security Copilot, this is probably a nice addition to test with. Anything to say on it, Kenneth, for example?
Yeah, what we see now is that Microsoft is actually building what we call so-called agents, and agents are capable of performing a specific task and can actually be used to build some glue between two products. So, for example, we have Defender Vulnerability Management, giving us insight on what software is installed on devices and which vulnerabilities there are in that software, which can actually start talking to something like enterprise app management within Intune, so that, for example, if an app is detected with maybe a vulnerability, that we can have a new version of that app being deployed to the devices which need an update of that app. So I think this will be is another example of one of the agents that Microsoft will release in order to make this even better. It does require a security copilot, though. So, to be honest, I don't expect every company to start leveraging this directly. But it's really interesting to see what agents will bring to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not only a Copilot license, you need Intune Plan 1, Security
Yeah.
Copilot, Security Compute Unit, so you need that, it needs to be
Yeah.
active, but also Defender Vulnerability Management and an Intune Suite license. So it's
Yeah.
you need a bunch of licenses to use this agent, but on the other side, it probably takes away a lot of manual effort that you need to do normally, and it
Indeed.
gives you reporting on
Yeah.
the actions that you need to take there. So
And looking at that, Frans, maybe we can also see this just as examples of what is possible. And I wouldn't be surprised that maybe other third-party vendors providing application patching solutions will come up with their own agents hooking into the Defender threat and vulnerability management and making it possible to actually automate the whole process of keeping apps updated and therefore lower your threat vulnerability landscape.
yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Sander?
I'm curious about this point, also considering from an Azure Sentinel perspective, for example, because we also have Sentinel where you can send logs to, and also Sentinel has some automation in place, of course. So
Yeah, but
yeah.
that's this is relying on Defender Vulnerability Management.
Mhm.
Defender Vulnerability Management is also used within Sentinel, but not as actions and giving you the integration with Intune, and that's what this agent does. It takes the recommendations that the Defender staff has within vulnerability management and takes that to your Intune environment, and it takes directly action. If you approve that, it takes directly action in your Intune environment.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
know, but there are also workbooks in place for the Sentinel part, which also work, and then you don't have to buy all the expensive other licenses, for example.
Yeah, I do
But
agree, but
yeah,
I don't think they will be able to provide the automation that an agent can deliver
no.
because it requires a lot of additional scripting to make that possible. And
Yeah.
the agent is actually specifically written for this specific task. And later on, can also start interacting with other agents, which I think, will be hard to build in Sentinel functionality only. So for this is a real specific use case where AI agents will add extra benefits, in my opinion.
absolutely. And moving forward to a topic, Sander, that you have brought onto the table. We all know, and we talked a lot on EPM, endpoint privilege managed in also in the last recording that we did. There is a new possibility to explicitly deny elevation. And we had upfront this recording. We had a discussion on the necessary of this capability. Maybe what have we discussed? Elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, well, as mentioned earlier in an earlier podcast as well, I'm quite new in this modern workplace area, and when reading this, my first thought was, okay, why should I add a specific deny policy for executables? Because if it's not in EPM configured, it's denied in any way. So that was my question for you. Why should you explicitly deny or create a deny rule? And uh, the point where we are, the little conclusion could be is that if you create a deny policy explicitly in Intune for a specific file, you won't be able to send an elevation request in the first place. So when you normally you click on the executable, you request elevation of a request for elevation, then it comes to the EPM platform, and then you can improve it, etc. And when you create a deny rule from out of Intune, then you won't be able to ask elevation in the first place.
Yeah, so I think it can also circumvent that you're actually being hammered with all kinds of elevation requests for maybe apps for which you already know from a corporate perspective that you never want to allow them. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
well,
do see that more and more functionality is being added to EPM, which is quite interesting. Yeah, so becoming better
well,
and better.
well. In the meantime, I was thinking there could be a scenario because we discussed in our earlier podcast that EPM now allows command line with arguments. Well, if you have a PowerShell script that has arguments and you are allowed to execute that script, but you want to stop keeping people asking for PowerShell.exe, for example, that could be a scenario that you say, hey, we want to deny every PowerShell.exe files, and explicitly you can allow the specific PowerShell with some arguments.
Yeah, so
I think that's
I think
that's
those are actually valid use cases. To be honest, I haven't looked at this specific part of the EPM platform, but again, as I said, more and more functionalities are being added, making the solution more and more interesting for potential customers.
Nice. And cross-platform device inventory. Next topic.
Yeah.
There was one, Kenneth, from you, and Microsoft is adding more and more. What is it? Operating systems, developer platforms in the device inventory. What is it?
Yeah, so uh, in order to understand what Microsoft is doing here, we need to go back into the old config manager times, where we actually had device inventory as well. And within device inventory, we were able to make an inventory of hardware and software in the device. And we were able to adjust what would be inventoried. And within Config Manager, we could use that information to build what we called collections. Well, since a lot of customers are actually considering moving to Intune, customers probably requested Microsoft, hey, we need a sort alike functionality within Intune, which actually resulted in the fact that inventory has also been created into Intune as well, allowing us to see more about the devices being inventoried and hopefully leverage that information within scripts and other stuff. But basically, that was released already for Windows and has now been, it is now cross-platform, meaning that macOS and Android is supported as well. And eventually, we could decide to use this information to fill like a CMDB, for example, an external CMDB, and give information to that environment as well. So I think this is a welcome addition, and we will probably see that what can be inventoried will actually be expanded. And I do expect that, of course, all the other platforms like iOS, iPadOS, maybe even Linux will be added in the near future as well.
Nice. So more and more information coming into the system that we are using, and probably that will help to move forward on that. What was the next topic? I have the list is so long. Enhanced security during unattended remote help sessions on Android devices. That is one. I brought it. I think I brought it on the table because managing, for example, Zebra devices or others that are placed into a retail store or whatever, and you need to enhance the configuration. Now, if you want to do remote help, someone needs to push a button to allow that you have access to that system. And Microsoft has now the security is enhanced, so you have the ability to make connection unattended with a remote help session on Android devices. So they enhance the security and the user awareness during the remote assistance by blocking the screen of the device and notifying the users if they are interacting with it. So that if you have connected to that system and you probably someone is walking in, sees a mouse, the cursor or something else is moving, but they are also informed that someone else is connected to the system with remote help. And I think that probably gives some better understanding what is happening before you're calling 911, for example.
Yeah, indeed. To add to this, we see that these devices actually are mainly used by frontline workers. So people maybe not in the office. So if you want to support those people, having some kind of remote functionality available is necessary. What we do see though is that we actually really need to standardize on certain brands of Android device manufacturers, because both Samsung and Zebra provide additional functionality on top of the Android operating system, making it possible to actually add and configure extra device-specific configuration. And that's something that we can do nowadays within Intune using OEM config files. For Samsung, we need the service plugin agent being available, and for some functionality, even an additional paid license to configure those settings. I think that's quite confusing when we are talking about Android, because you can buy Android from all kinds of different vendors. But when it comes to these specific devices, we really need to standardize on Zebra, which has the devices with the QR code scanner, the rugged devices, to say so, or having the Samsung devices, which are protected by Samsung Knox, and having the Knox service plugin in order to actually be able to configure them beyond what's standard capable within Microsoft Intune on the Android OS.
Yeah, and this is this feature is only can only be used on the device Zebra Samsung devices where you are mentioning, but also they need to be enrolled on the Android Enterprise Corporate owned dedicated devices profiles.
Indeed, yeah. So the dedicated device is actually a device which can be considered like a device with some specific functionality, and not necessarily a device the user uses to read email and as their work device.
Yeah. And that was Android, but and there's also a lot of involvement and moving forward on Apple, macOS, iOS, and that kind of stuff. But we have some new devices that we can now support from Intune, isn't it?
Yeah. So we see more and more functionality being added in order to start managing Linux devices. Again, also here, maybe the same as with Android. Microsoft doesn't support every Linux distribution. Maybe technically it will work, but we are talking about supporting stuff. But there we see that actually more and more functionality is being added, making it possible to actually add devices to Intune, add some security settings to them, and we can even make those devices compliant if we want to, making them suitable to include in conditional access as well as just a compliant device. And in this case, we see that Microsoft announced that new antivirus exclusion settings and endpoint detection and response settings have been added. So we can configure that now in Intune and target that to enrolled Linux devices.
What I've seen from my former employer, I have some colleagues that are using Linux distros to do their work as an analyst, and there were always specialty devices that we can manage and so on and so on. And what we see now is that managing Linux distros will become more and more normal. And all these kind of capabilities like endpoint security, endpoint detection and response, antivirus exclusions on that kind of devices, that really helps to manage your complete ecosystem. And I think Linux distros are becoming more and more general also in business environments as well.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Here we see two options. So we can either just install like a Linux distribution on a physical device. We can have a virtual device, and we of course have the Windows subsystem for Linux available as well. Where from the OS where it runs on, we can detect whether supported distributions are there and maybe use that in our compliance policies. But of course, in the OS itself, we can install an agent and make sure that the OS itself is compliant as well. What makes Linux different is that in the concept of conditional access, we either have browser-based applications and we have what we call the modern authentication clients. But for Linux, Microsoft doesn't provide any modern authentication clients. But we can, of course, leverage that status when somebody connects using the browser to their email, for example, that we can consider the device compliant if it meets the compliance rules. Making it possible, for example, to print some stuff or maybe download stuff. But again, I'm not seeing, and I think you mentioned that as well, Frans, that people are working and reading their email on their Linux devices. So in most cases, when it's being used by developers doing specific stuff and things like that. But again, it's interesting to see that Microsoft is willing to support the whole ecosystem of operating systems.
I think I agree 99% on that. I know people that are using Linux distros for their the normal work, so also reading mail and that kind of stuff on that devices. But when talking about privacy and what Microsoft collects from your system, what's necessary, you have also always people that are complaining about the fact that they are collecting stuff and within Linux that is probably less, and they are swearing to use that kind of devices for that. But luckily, we can get them into some sort of management, and the capabilities are expanding that way. And I think that's good to help them in a business environment on that devices.
So, Eric, since you manage a lot of customers, do you have like customers using Linux distribution stuff?
What you see, Linux as a desktop, you only see it in thin clients. But you manage them, for example, via HPDM. But we see the many Linux distributions for hosting applications, and normally is just an appliance. What I think what's okay about it, but that's a really problem because Intune is not a server management problem, and all Linux servers are, in my case, are 100% servers or used for services. So I don't think you are going to manage that, but it's to complete your CMDB. So you know that there is, and maybe some vulnerability that you know your assets. Um, that's more important, I think. But the problem is, Intune is for endpoints, and I don't have any customer that uses Linux as a desktop. So it's not that useful for my customers because for the server part, it will be nice that you have your CMDB as a complete overview.
Yeah.
So the guys who are managing Linux at my company are not going to use Intune for that.
No, but it's not that it is not used that often. Totally agree with that. But what you see is that there are people that are doing that, and yeah, luckily we have the opportunity to manage them.
Oh, well, I think there is a whole bunch of Linux users in the world. If you look from an Intune perspective, otherwise, why should Microsoft invest that much in evaluating the Linux part? Um, and I think it's especially the development world that is using Linux like Ubuntu or whatever, Red Hat.
But they also don't want to have a managed laptop. The development
Yeah.
world is my
Well,
opinion.
well, I think that's the main problem also for now, because yes, they don't want to have a managed laptop because of all the restrictions from
Yeah.
their perspective, and I think they're right in some way. But yeah, it's better seeing what is happening than not seeing what is happening. And,
No.
and I'm not talking
Well,
about
I do have another take on that because what we do see is that Microsoft, of course, is competing with other products in the endpoint management world, where actually being able to support as many platforms is like a plus when you start comparing products against each other. And
Yep.
yeah, if Microsoft wants this product to actually score good in things like Gartner reviews and stuff like that, having support for as many platforms will actually be a big advantage for the product as well. But again, I do agree that probably the Linux use case will probably not be the biggest use in this case. And I don't see customers who only have Linux devices start using Intune to manage those devices. Uh, but again, it's good to see that additional functionality is being added here.
Absolutely. Let's continue because time is also moving forward.
Yeah.
We have an important topic to discuss. That is Entra Connect. Microsoft is rolling out a new version of Entra Connect, or an enhanced version. How do we call that? It's in public preview at the moment, Eric, and you had some experience already with that.
Yes, it's a public preview. So we all know DearSync and migrated to Entra Connect, but now they're gonna fix some security things. So we all know, I hope you all know, that you have to secure your Entra Connect server like you secure your domain controller, because your Entra Connect via your Entra Connect server you can become easily domain admin, but you can easily become admin in a 365 tenant. So and we all know use MFA and all that kind of material, but Entra Connect Sync was still using a locally stored password to authenticate with Microsoft Entra ID. So so now Microsoft with the new Entra Connect is moving from username and password to certificate-based authentication, or how they call it, application-based authentication, which in the end is using a certificate to
Yeah.
authenticate against Entra. So that's a huge improvement for security. Are we there yet? Of course not, because the first guys like Dirk-Jan Mollema already have seen some flaws in it, but it's much, much better than using a username and password. So it will be definitely first step in a better security for this part. So maybe not this first version is flawless, but it's a much better enhancement in security.
Kenneth,
So,
anything?
I have something to add to that. So what we have seen is becoming certificate-based authentication, which is phishing resistant. And therefore, we don't have to do something within our conditional access policies in order to exclude the accounts being used by Entra Connect, because that account couldn't, of course, be hit by any MFA policies and stuff like that. And from what I could see is, and Eric already mentioned that the security on the Entra Connect server is becoming more and more important. Because one of the things we have seen that, for example, if that server is running on a virtual or a device without TPM, that actually those certificates can easily be hijacked and mimicked again. It's like a token, stealing tokens and stuff like that. So making the Entra Connect server secure should be part of the new solution. And it's not like the new solution is secure by default in all scenarios.
And if I listen to this podcast or viewing the recording that we have done, what steps do I need to take? Is that only upgrading Entra Connect on my service, and will it automatically be configured with the Entra Connect app that is registered in Entra, or do I need to take steps on that?
For my opinion, it's just installing the new version, I thought.
And then if you're choosing for managed by Microsoft Entra Connect, then it's realizing the app registration, setting up the secrets and that kind of stuff. But you can also use your own application, so you can create the application upfront, and you can bring your own certificate. I will post the URL to the Microsoft documentation in the show notes as well, where you can read all this kind of stuff. But upgrades.
It will be interesting to see where the next thing will be with Microsoft, because we now have Entra Connect, but there is also what we call a cloud agent. Where actually the logic of synchronizing on-premises resources actually comes from the cloud, and you only install agents within your on-premises environment. To be honest, I think that is even a more secure solution in the end. So I really hope that that functionality, for example, leveraging technology in the cloud and using agents on your devices on premises will be where Microsoft will actually invest most of its time, making it feature compatible with what Entra Connect can do nowadays. Hopefully allowing us to get rid of that Entra Connect server in our environment as well.
Yeah.
You're triggering me, friends, about the certificate part. I was thinking about a blog I've written a half year ago about breaking the break glass account using a service principal and certificate instead of a user password. It sounds a bit like I'm still able to log in with also this service principal when I have the certificate on my system as well. So when I create my own self-signed certificate for login, and I know the application ID, then I'm still able to log in using that service principal.
Yeah, but
Probably.
this is still the issue with that. And based on that, there was actually quite an interesting discussion started by Merrill from the program manager from the Entra team on whether to use service principals as a break glass mechanism. So I'm not really certain whether you have read that whole discussion, but it might be worthwhile to read the pros and cons being mentioned by the people part of that discussion as well.
Let me see if I can find the URL. I will post it in the show notes. So you can have a read on that, and that covers all the updates of today. We are 45 minutes on our way. We had a few extra bullets. Microsoft wants Windows to update all software on your PC. That's an article on bleepingcomputer.com. I will post them in the show notes so you can have a look in that. Microsoft also introduces a new Windows backup tool for businesses. If you're interested into that one, reach out to us. Probably we can have a talk on that. URL will follow in the show notes. And last thing to mention was defending against evolving identity attack techniques, where Microsoft on the security blog has a blog post on adversary in the middle, on OAuth phishing, device code phishing, and all that kind of stuff. So really interesting to read. URL will follow in the show notes, and that makes it a complete one for the overview of the May-June updates of Intune and Entra. There were a lot, but when we started with the recording, we are thinking about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but it's way more that we have covered this recording. So thanks, guys, for joining me on this episode of the Workplace Ninja Netherlands podcast, What's New? Thanks for joining, and I say until, next month probably. Let's do that.